All right, students and everybody watching or listening, welcome back. This is another session and another Friends of the Class visit. And this time we are joined by Dan Wann, Dr. Dan Wann, a professor of psychology at Murray State University. And Dan and I go back about 10, 12 years now. And we've done a lot of work together in our research, which is typically in sport fandom. But outside of that, we've also have bonded over our Disney fandom and talk about our tips when we go to the parks and the different things that we do on our trips and planning trips and everything. So it's been a really, really fun time knowing Dan. And as I have said before, a lot of my career has come from help from Dan and Rick Grieve. And but then also the three of us being able to talk about Disney has been just added to that friendship. So that's enough from me. I want to welcome Dr. Wann to the show, to the class. And why don't you start, Dan, by giving us your introduction to Disney and then bring us up to today about your fandom with Disney.
Sure. So first time I went to Disney, I didn't want to go to Disney. There was a sports sci conference in the fall of 2001 that was in Orlando. And, the kids were 3 and 6 at the time. And, if you're going to go to Orlando and you're going to take your family with you, kids are 3 and 6. I think, there's a federal statute that says you've got to take them to Disney at some point. And so, we're like, okay, we're going to do this. And I did not really care for amusement parks. I mean, I'd gone several times as a kid growing up in Kansas City to various amusement parks, but I didn't like standing in lines. And I mean, I liked thrill rides, but it wasn't so much my thing. I'd rather spend my money going to a sporting event or, heading out to Colorado or something like that. But it just seemed like, okay, this is the thing to do. And we were getting some encouragement because my brother and sister-in-law at the time were Disney Vacation Club people, and they had gone a lot, and like, you got to go, you got to take your kids. I'm like, I kind of backed into a corner. All of my excuses were used up, so now I guess I sort of got to. And they're like, well, you got to stay on park, and I'm like, why would you stay inside of a park? I didn't even know what that meant, you know. And I can remember just my knowledge of Disney was so bad. I literally thought that all of Epcot was inside the ball. I literally believed that Epcot was what was inside this big ball. And they're like, you're either stupid or you don't understand, the concept of size. And then I kind of thought about it, like, yeah, that probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but what do I know? And so I remember at a night class, and we were going to leave in like mid-October, and every week this night class met, and the groups would do the students would meet in groups for about an hour, and I was just reading through this book, this so-and-so's guide to Disney, and I would just check mark things. That sounds like something that I don't think will be terrible. Oh yeah, it sounds like something that won't be terrible. Well, fireworks, I kind of like fireworks. Let's check mark and go do this. And then like, where do you want to stay? I'm like, well, I don't know. What are my options? And someone said something about something called All-Star Sports. And I'm like, check, please. If you can drag me there, that sounds like a pretty good place to drag me. And I really didn't, care to go, but it was the thing to do. So we had it all set up, and we're going to go down there. And we found super cheap airfare to fly us to not Orlando. It might have been Tallahassee. It was a bit of a drive to get there, but it was like $29 to fly all of us, and like, how you pass that up. So we'd fly at night with the two boys, and we didn't get to All-Star Sports until 1 o'clock in the morning. And we got there, and I can remember all of the Disney people that were there standing outside at 1 o'clock in the morning, welcoming us.
Mhm.
Now, that's the weirdest thing. Like I love certain hotel chains, and they've never stood outside and waited for me, even though I'm a diamond member, right? I mean, I'm like, well, it was weird. I couldn't, because I didn't know anything about the culture of Disney. And so we went in and I looked around All Star Sports and all of these pictures of, athletes. And then we walked in the room and the bed sheet was athletes, and I thought, I think I've walked onto the mothership. This
Mhm.
is like the coolest thing I've ever seen. And so our first day was Epcot the next day. And as I mentioned, it was 2001. Well, it was 5 weeks after 9/11, and
Mhm.
no one was traveling. I mean, I literally have a video of standing on a bench at Epcot outside the Morocco Pavilion at 1:30 in the afternoon, and I do a full 360. You see three people. That was
Mhm.
it. I mean, there was literally no one there. So it was a great time to sort of go to Disney if you didn't like crowds, because there was no crowds. But I just wanted to hate it so bad, Cody. I just, I mean, I had this schema built in of I'm gonna hate this stuff. And I can remember so many things. Like the first thing we did was Ellen's Universe of Energy. And I just missed that ride so much. And I thought, well, this is really cool. I love building it. This is stupid. I was trying to
Yeah.
stop myself from liking it, and then I'm like, well, now we're just sitting in this big giant room with these chairs. This is really boring. All of a sudden, the giant chair, the whole stadium started to move. Like, this is the coolest thing. I bet this is stupid. Just totally fighting myself. And finally, by the time I saw Illuminations, which has always been my very favorite thing, Disney, I went home that night and thought, this is the most magical place I've ever been in
Mhm.
my entire life. And was completely hooked ever since. I mean, that was 2001, and I've been either on a Disney cruise or on park at Disney World, something around 40 times since
Yeah.
then. Now, a lot of it would be, I would have a conference down there for a day, and I would just go over and hang out at, Disney Springs. Always will be downtown Disney to me. Or I would just go ride the monorail and,
Mhm.
eat dinner at the Floridian or something like that. But um, it really became one of the true passions of my life. And
Yeah.
um, when the kids were little, from the time that they were about 3 and 6 to about maybe 9 and 12, 10 and 13, I just refer to those as the camping, travel, baseball, Disney years,
Yeah.
because those were the things we sort of did, and we do just kind of take turns going from one activity to the next. And multiple trips every year to Disney. I used to set my speaking fee at $1,000, because if someone paid me $1,000 to speak, that was enough back then to fly all four of us and stay at Disney and go
Yep.
to Disney World for 4 days.
Yep.
And then I found out about Disney Cruise about 3 years later. I think '04 maybe was the first time I took a Disney cruise, and boy, that's something that I can't get enough of. Um, I I love Disney Cruise. Well, I can't wait to get on the new boat, the Wish,
Yeah.
in a couple of months. I have run the Disney Marathon. Michelle and I, we did the Disney 10K at Marathon Weekend last January. So, what's that? 8 months ago, we did the 10K. We went back to our hotel. We showered. We got in the car. We drove the port and hopped on a 3-day cruise. So that's pretty good time
Yeah.
in this person's book. So yeah, I mean, it's really central to who I am, right? I mean, I have Disney memorabilia all over the house. I got posters up all over the house. I actually looked today, and Disney is second place of all of the shirts that I own. It's behind only Murray State. So
Yeah.
I have more Disney t-shirts and polos than I have Chiefs or Jayhawks or Royals or Cubs, my other, beloved things that I kind of have a passion for. Only Murray State is ahead of Disney, and that's saying a lot. And my wife Michelle, she's like I am. I mean, she absolutely loves it. Her first husband, they took their kids to Disney, and she fell in love with it. She didn't go back until, we got together, and now she's glad to be married to I've been 40 times in 20 years. Let's be honest. I probably need a 12-step program of some time, right? There's probably a level of, Rick Grieve, he's a clinical psychologist. He might be able to help me out with this stuff. No, it's a passion. It's a love, and it's a love that, extends beyond the parks and beyond the cruise. I mean, it's when we would see that, some channel had, we've made, we're going to show you the new what to do at Animal Kingdom that they would put out on some, Animal Planet or something, that was must see TV for us, and watch YouTube videos and sit down and read the Disney discussion boards and things like that. It's a passion.
Yeah.
It's one of my three passions, sports, the Rockies, and Disney.
Yeah, thank you for that. And what we are going to talk about today is what fandom is, because and I'll try to link it in the show notes. I'll try to find it and link it. But so listeners and watchers know that Dr. Dan Wann is known as Dr. Fandom. He actually has been featured in ESPN Short about what sports fandom is and what it means to people. Well, there are a lot of similarities between being a fan of sport and being a fan of something else like Disney. And one thing that Dan and I have talked about a lot is the purpose of this class is really to at the end, the takeaway is, if you are a fan of something and it doesn't hurt someone else, then it's generally a good thing, because it makes you a happier person. It makes you more successful, or it makes you a better member of society, that type of thing. And so I want to start there. Is what is fandom? And not just specific to sport or Disney or anything, but what is fandom, and what are the psychological underpinnings of fandom? So why do we choose something to identify with, consume, and make that a passion of our life?
Yeah, I think that to answer the first question, what is fandom? Yeah, I think that having spent, the better part of, 35, 36 years in psychology, you find out what your discipline does well. You also find out, what they sort of stink at. And I think that one of the complaints I've always had for psychology is we're really good at making pretty straightforward things super, super complex, right? So, you look at people, they'll say, describe fandom, and like an hour and a half later, you forgot what the question even was. We've known each other for, as you said, well over a decade now, and that I have to kind of cut through the psychobabble a little bit. To me, fandom is simply having an interest in something.
Yeah.
Right. A passing or greater interest in something. So for Disney, it's any level of interest in any aspect of that brand, that product, that pastime, that entity. And certainly there are people out there, because Disney is such a large thing and encompasses so much. There are people out there that will say, yeah, I didn't even know that Disney Cruise exists. I'm an annual pass holder at the parks, Disney Cruise. I wouldn't even know why you would do that. And there are people that, all they do all day long is watch, Disney full-length films. You have zero desire to go to Disney World. I mean, that was me. We watched all of the Disney movies. Had kids, but go to the place now. Why would I do that? So there's so much there that encompasses Disney. There's more opportunities to be a fan of Disney than there is really an opportunity to be a fan of just about anything else. Now, I get it in, if you're a Cubs fan, you can like the Cubs history, you can like Wrigley Field, you can like the players, you can like the mascot. Okay, there's other things. Disney just puts that on steroids, right? I mean, there's so much that you can, there are people that say the best thing in the world is Disney Springs. I don't even bother to go to the parks anymore. And there are people that go to the parks that have never even heard of Disney Springs. And it's like, a mile and a half away. So there's so much more to being a Disney fan because there's so much more to Disney, I believe, than these other entities. Now, the why that someone is a fan and the why is their fandom are sort of different questions, right? So why is someone a fan? Well, it's because there's something that they find, intrinsically or extrinsically fulfilling about that activity, right? So, why do I like Tower of Terror? My favorite ride is Tower of Terror because I enjoy physically the sensation of the drop rides. I like physically, that's pleasing to me. I love the old TV show, right? I think that was a classic TV show to me. I love kind of the old black and white horror stuff, I love the fact that for a very brief moment, when you're at the top, the doors open, you can see so much of Disney World, right? So why do I like that ride more than, I'm not getting on Dumbo because spin around in a circle, that's not good for me. I'll start to be a little bit green in the face.
Yeah.
And so, why is someone a fan of a certain thing? That thing is just pleasing to them in some way. I think a more interesting question, and you and I've talked about this on varying levels, Disney, sports, other entities. A more interesting question to me is, why is it that our species is a fan, period? Regardless of what it is they're picking,
Yeah, why does it even exist?
Exactly. And I think that a really good point to make here is that if you're in a mall and you randomly pick somebody out and you walk up to them and you say, are you a fan of Disney? Yes or no. You'll get an answer of yes or no. Some people will say, yeah. And then when you talk to them, they're like you and I, and we can talk for 15 hours about Disney. Others will say, yeah, a little bit. And some will say, no, don't care. You're going to get a yes or a no. If you go up to that person and say, are you a fan of something? I don't know how many times you'd have to ask that question to find somebody who does not have fandom for anything. Again, I consider fandom an interest in some entity. Who doesn't have an interest in something, right? Whether it's reading or, sports or politics or travel, cooking, wine, whatever. Everybody seems to have their pastime, their bag. So I think a very interesting question is, why do we do this? If it's universal, following something, being a fan of something is universal, that's where, the little hairs on the back of my neck start to perk up a little bit. I'm saying, if everyone's doing it, there's got to be a reason, right? This can't be random. If everybody has something that gets them up in the morning and is something they just cannot wait to talk to somebody about, there's got to be a reason for that. It's got to play a role in what it is to be human. And over the last about 8 to 10 years, that's sort of been my quest, is to try and figure out, predominantly from the perspective of sports fandom, but it carries over to, I believe, any other kind of fandom. And certainly the research that I've done has been found to be valid in other areas of fandom, stuff that you and I've worked on together over the years. I think that there's what the research is suggesting now is there's four what I call pillars of fandom. Okay. 4 things that fandom will bring to the table that help meet these basic human psychological needs. And I always start with the need to belong. We are such social creatures. We have evolved to be social. Our ancestors that affiliated survived more than those that were out on their own. And so it's really who we are. And fandom helps people belong. It helps you get this sense that you're not out there alone, that there's people that I have this commonality with, this important bond with. And that's when, if you're sitting if you're in an airport and you're just sitting there and the person next to you happens to have some t-shirt on showing something that you care about, Cody, if you're in an airport waiting to come back from a conference and you look to you're just sitting there and the person next to you, has on a Disney hat, a Disney shirt, right? Their bag has, a Disney tag on it. You're saying something, right?
Yeah.
You immediately
Yeah.
have a friend. You don't know their name. You don't know where they're headed. You don't know their criminal record, but you're gonna talk to these people,
Yeah.
right? You're gonna say, "Hey, it seems like you like Disney. I love Disney too," and you are going to smile because suddenly you found not just a connection, but you found a valued connection.
Yeah.
And I think a critical point to make here is that recent work, the last 3-4 years, shows that those passing connections to others, they're just as psychologically beneficial to our sense of well-being as the more in-depth detail.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
walk past somebody with a Disney shirt at the mall and you say, loving Disney, and they're like, yeah, we just got back. You are immediately in a better place than you were before because you just feel connected to society. So that's one.
Do you think some of that is what you just talked about, feeling like kind of better with those just casual interactions? Do you think some of that is because as humans or just as creatures, we want that like affirmation? And so we want the need for belonging,
Right.
but we also kind of get this affirmation that, hey, we're a fan of this. Here's someone else that's a fan of this. We have this connection. That's really fun. And also, like, see, other people are fans of this. So therefore, I'm making a right decision. I'm like,
I think you're right. I think it validates what we're doing.
yeah, yeah.
Right. So evidently on the Disney Wish in the new Star Wars lounge, there's a drink that you can purchase
Yes. Yeah.
for $5,000, right? And I would think that if somebody purchased that drink, the last thing that they would want to find out was that in the history of the Disney Wish, they're the only person to purchase that drink, because that might make them feel, okay, maybe I really do need a 12-step program at this point, if I'm that much into Disney and or Star Wars. So if you say, I did this, and then you're like, all of a sudden there's, a Disney discussion board group for people who've done that, I promise you, they're going to dive into that because it validates what they've done, right? So, and isn't that what you and I do? I mean, every time we get together, we talk Disney, and afterwards, you think to yourself, oh yeah, okay, maybe I'm not so crazy after all. But I think about this stuff, and and I mean, let's be honest. You put together classes on fandom for Disney, and then you try and get people to come on your show to talk about how much they love Disney so that you don't feel like you're weird for loving Disney so much, right? I think this is your cathartic event. As we're doing this now. So yes, I think absolutely by feeling that I fit in, that's great. But it's also great knowing that opportunity, that option is there.
Yeah.
That other people are like, yeah, there are others among us that are like you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the I've said it many times, one of the neatest things about this class is the number of people that I have talked to about this. And I didn't start out the show like this, but this is actually the 100th class of this. So and of that, probably 70 have been 65 or 70 at least have been visits like this. And being able to hear people's stories and their connections, and then you walk away feeling like, hey, I understand their connection to this because that's the way I feel about this as well. So you have that sense of belonging with it. You had 3 other pillars also.
The next one I was talking about is the fact that, yeah, we want to belong, we want to fit in, but at the same time, it's also wonderful to feel unique. Or as I always tell my students, it sure feels special to feel special, right? We want to feel like yeah, we fit in, but at the same time, we have some level of uniqueness. There's something
Hmm.
different about us. So this need for distinctiveness is also very
Okay.
powerful. And fandom allows you to do that. So one of the things that I think that, I mean, you can see this among sports fandom very clearly, right? That when you ask somebody that lives in Boston, who are your favorite sports teams? They're like, oh, I like the Celtics, I like the Red Sox, I like the Patriots, and I like Manchester United. And like, wait, you like what?
Yeah.
Because they're going to have that one that sets them apart in some way. And then you say, well, how does the fandom for Disney do that? Of course, fandom for Disney does that. So several of the people that I used to coach Little League sports with, what we shared was a love for baseball and a love for Disney. And so we would sit around when we weren't talking baseball and talk Disney. It was always interesting how you would have, 3, 4, 5 people talk about their 4-day trip to Walt Disney World. And none of those vacations were the same.
Yeah.
Right. They, like we would always get to the parks early and use the extra magic hour. Always, always, always. And other people like, I actually went with Rick one time. He'd been to Disney a number of times. And the good Dr. Gree, the first time he and I went, we got to the park before it started. He's like, wait, they have shows, before they actually do, because his family would use their time in the morning at the pools, which is not what we did. And another friend, what he loved was he would get the family to bed around 9 o'clock and he would head to go to the ESPN zone back when they had that. And somebody else, their favorite thing was they had to go to every single restaurant they could get their hands on, right? They're like a Disney foodie. And so we would talk and okay, so you got these 5 people that are sharing in this belongingness for their love for Disney. But at the same time, I could say, well, yeah, but you know what? Here's the way that I do it, right? That makes it different. And here's how you do it. So yeah, you're the same, but you're also different.
Yeah.
Right. I think that the third pillar I often talk about is meaning, that it really does give you a sense of purpose. And, again, this is predominantly done in sport fandom, but as we're learning in a lot of other areas of research, it certainly also is an important contributor to why people are fans of things like Disney. I mean, it gives you a reason to get up in the morning. So Run Disney has this thing that they're doing, which is the spring surprise. And Michelle and I intend on running hopefully all of the races this spring for the spring surprise. Last time they did it, which was the first time they ever had it, it was a 5K, a 10K, and then the Tower of Terror 10 miler, which sounds like something I should do since I like Tower of Terror. And so we're going to try and do that. But like they haven't announced what those races are, even though registration is like in a week. And so, the alarm went off today at my house at 5:15. And the first thing I did was I pushed the snooze. And the second thing I did was I looked to see if they'd announced what the races were. It literally woke me up for like the 50th day in a row. It woke me up thinking about, and I still don't know, and it's killing me. It gives me a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. What a fandom for something does is it gives you a sense that there's something grander than the self. That we're not just, sort of alone walking around on this, giant rock floating through space, that there's something bigger out there. There's things that I can fall in love with that, bottom line, matter to me, that I care about. And if you ask individuals, so how does it provide meaning in your life? They often will have a hard time sort of articulating that. But then when you say things like, well, does it give you a sense of purpose and a sense of joy to wake up and think, man, today is the day that, my ability to book the activities on the cruise, my booking window opens up. And they're like, oh yeah, man, those are days I wake up immediately. Well, so that's giving you meaning and purpose. And you can kind of help them see that there's more to this than I really thought. And then the fourth pillar, which is really, I think, the newest one that people are talking about. I haven't seen a lot of research on it. We're just now beginning to discuss it. And that's the fact that these types of fandoms aid in the need for structure.
Okay.
People hate uncertainty. As a species, we do everything we can to reduce uncertainty. We like to have things sort of lined up. A lot of people like lists, they like to plan things out. We like structure in our lives. Certainly children function better, they're psychologically healthy and physically healthy if they have more structure in their life. Fandoms do that. Sport fandom, very obvious here, people set their daily, weekly, monthly, annual calendar by things. I mean, people that have an annual Super Bowl party already know what that day is.
Yeah.
People that are huge baseball fans know opening day. Basketball fans know when the opening big night, when Kentucky's big night, or midnight at KU, those types of things. We set our, football fans, they know 12 o'clock, 3:30, 7 o'clock Sunday, and 7 o'clock or 7:30 on Monday. I mean, they know those times. Absolutely, Disney does the same thing.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe so, just read through the Run Disney blogs.
Yeah.
Right? There are people that, even though they don't know what the races are for the upcoming spring surprise, they already have booked and structured their away time based on that. There are people who've already booked hotels, Disney resorts for that time, even though that they don't know what the races are. I mean, I know that there are people, because I've seen me do that, and we already have our time booked for that, even though we don't know what we're doing. And so, and people will structure their vacations around their Disney Vacation Club points. And it gives them one less thing to kind of worry about, right? It's like, okay, so I can structure my life based on when I'm going to go out of town. Listen to people talk about what they love about Disney cruises, right? It's, oh, okay, so I know that dinner is this time. My wait staff is going to be with me the whole time, so they're always going to know what I love. I'm going to come back and my room is going to be straightened. The shows are always at this time and this time. All they're saying is they no longer have to worry about those things. Those events are structured in for them, and it's just one less thing they got to do. Disney does a great job of not just aiding in the other three. I believe also in that fourth pillar, the need for structure.
So on that, there's actually two things, but and I imagine I will forget one. But I want to ask one, so I make sure I don't forget it, is going along with the need for structure and also the need for meaning. What you mentioned, asking someone, hey, are you excited when you wake up and you can now book this 60 days out, or you could book this activity or here. And also going along with that need for structure, you said that's one last thing people need to worry about. How do you think that psychologically kind of goes with what's happening in the parks right now, or at least in the American parks, the domestic parks, that you don't have Fast Pass Plus anymore, where if you're staying on property, you book 60 days out. If you're staying on property, you can book your restaurant, 180 days out or so. That now with restaurants, you can still book beforehand, but now with Genie and Genie Plus and individual Lightning Lane, everything has to be done that day. And we've heard a lot of people talk about how it kind of takes away from that experience. It takes away from the experience when they're in the parks, because they have to be on their phones the whole time, and they have to be looking at things. And I've definitely experienced that, especially when you go with small kids. Individual Lightning Lane and Genie Plus is made for people with small kids, especially because I think everybody knows it's easier to stand in line for 10 minutes than 45 or 2 hours. But
Especially with kids.
yeah, how do you think what you're saying and the need for meaning and the need for structure, how does that kind of go along with what's being implemented in the parks right now? And how does it explain people's reactions to it? Because there are people who there are positive reactions and negative reactions to it.
Well, I think that a lot of the negative reactions, again, I like to not over psychobabble if I can get away with it. I think a lot of the negative reactions is people just in general don't like change, right? I mean, people like consistency in all aspects of life. And, you know, once they figure out a system, they like to stay with that system because that's the structure that they know, right? So it used to be fast pass. You just got to the park, stuck your little Kilo World card in and got your ticket. And that was that. And then, okay, now let's do it in advance. And people are like, well, but that takes away from the spontaneity of it. It does take away some of the spontaneity of it, but man, it sure seemed like a popular thing to people after about 6 months because they were like, okay, I know I've got this at this time and this at this time and this at this time.
Well, and it was almost like it was stories, it was bragging rights that you could tell, like, hey, I got this. Like, did you get this?
Exactly.
I remember a conversation with my mom talking about, hey, here's what happened. And I was able to get these. So,
it was a score, right?
Yeah.
And that allowed people, if they knew, okay, here's the 3 fast passes I have for this day, then they could structure the rest of the day around that. I mean, people that are seasoned Disney veterans, right? And if we're talking about Disney fans, we're not talking about the person who may be going to Disney World at some point. Right? I mean, we're talking about people that this does meet the need to belong. And so for those people, they have touring plans, right? Yeah. Well, that's just structure, right? And that's all that is, right? And for the new people, like, well, I'm going to go online, I'm going to pay this person to give me a touring plan. Think about that. That's just paying somebody to give you structure,
to provide the structure. Yeah.
Okay. So now with the Genie Plus, the lightning lanes, now it's, if you're like on the Facebook group for the Genie Plus, it's all about how can you stack these things.
Yeah.
Stacking rides is a fancy way of saying structure. That's all it is. And then on Facebook, people are posting like their successful days, like stacking ride after ride after ride. Because once you know, like what 4 or 5 or 6 rides you're going to ride in a row, I mean, you can take a deep breath, right? The day is planned out for you. I think Disney doesn't miss very many tricks, right? And people are, why would Disney do that? Well, they're a for-profit company and they know what they're doing, right? Do I think that Disney said, yeah, we should set this up so it helps meet the need for structure for people? I don't have any idea if they think about that kind of stuff, but it does, whether or not this was the intent or not. If it was the intent, well, high five, Disney. That's pretty impressive from a psychological perspective. If not, it just shows you how people will go out of their way in any given setting to add structure to the thing that they care about.
Yeah.
Right? And as far as the meaning is concerned, different rides fulfill meaning for different people.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the ride they're going to make sure that they could figure out a way to get on. That's what they're going to rope drop. Right. I mean, I'm not going to go to Hollywood Studios and not ride Tower of Terror. Right. I mean, I'm going to sprint right to Tower of Terror. That's what I'm going to ride that ride. I'll let the rest of the people go somewhere else. I'm going to go to Tower of Terror because that's the ride that has meaning to me. That's the ride that I think about putting the kids on for the first time and that kind of stuff. And so people will structure their day at the parks, on the cruise, watching Disney movies, whichever one has meaning for them, that's what they're going to head to.
And another thing that's always been interesting to me, and you mentioned it like with structure, is within the sports industry or the sports world. One thing that we talk about that makes sports unique from a lot of other things is the unknown outcome. The unknown outcome of games, and we do get some like psychological benefits from not knowing what's going to happen with those games and having that suspense in a controlled environment. You know, it's complete. I tell my classes
Right.
it's all the time. It's completely different. It's a completely different feeling to not know and experience the positive and negative emotions of your favorite team playing in a close game than it is not coming up at the end of the month and not knowing if you're going to have enough to make rent. Like that, this completely, like you're in a controlled environment. But from that, one thing I've always found interesting about Disney parks and just rides in general and like movies and things like that is our need to be surprised, even though we know what's happening. You go on the Tower of Terror, you know what's happening. You probably know every line of that ride. You know when it's going up, when it's going out to in the hallways, which is actually,
Right.
it's going down to the shafts where it's going to go up and down. And you know all of that. But every time you get on there, you and we all of us are able to in a way suspend our like we can go through the attraction knowing this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen now, but it's still in a way we allow ourselves to be surprised by it. Is it surprise, or is it like more just kind of, is it something other than surprise that we are
I think it's
experiencing?
anticipation. I think
Okay.
it's anticipation. You know, we often talk about this, Cody. We've had a lot of discussions about how, what separates sport is that unlike, the vast majority of pastimes out there, maybe not video games, maybe not board game fans, but most of them, you know what's going to happen in the end.
Yep.
Sport, you really do not know. Sport, you go in knowing that at the end of this consumption process, I might be in a really bad mood.
Yeah.
And that makes being in a really good mood that much better. But there's also an advantage to knowing what's going to happen.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is everybody that goes to a restaurant has their favorite meal. And when they order that favorite meal, they really don't want to be surprised about how that favorite meal tastes, right? I mean, they want that meal to be consistently whatever it is that they like about that meal. And I think that that's what the rides at Disney, it's what it brings to the table and sort of makes up for the fact that, you really do know what's going to happen. I don't even know what Disney would be like if, well, Indiana Jones, the epic stunt spectacular, if sometimes the stunt person actually does get run over by the big giant marble that's rolling down the hill, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how you would get away with that, but there is this sort of suspension of you don't know. And of course, the people that have never been there before, they don't know. But even if you know that's not going to happen, I know how neat this ride is going to be. And then there's always the nostalgia factor.
Yeah.
And then also, if you talk to Disney fans, they will tell you that they love going to Disney, to the parks with people who've never done it before, because they're vicariously experiencing that for the first time. Was it Disney at MGM? Say it's still MGM to me, at Hollywood Studios years ago. And the rest of the family had seats ready at Fantasmic. Got to be there about an hour and a half. Well, that to me was just an opportunity to see how many times I could ride Tower of Terror in a row.
Yeah, I mean, it's right there. You might as well.
Yeah, how many times? If you're curious, the answer is 9. You can ride it 9 times in an hour and a half. They don't have a single rider line, but they're constantly yelling single rider. And once you're in earshot, you yell me and you just. Meh. So one of the times I got on it, I was lucky enough to be in the very front, and 2 young ladies, they were maybe 14 or 15. They sat there next to me. They said, "Have you ever been on this ride?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is my 6th time tonight." Well, what happens? And I told them exactly what happened, that you're going to go through and you're going to like see this little clock and it's going to tick and then it's going to explode. You're going to see a person holding like a little Mickey, and the little family, and you're going to go and the lights are going to open up and then the door's going to close and then that's it. And the ride's over. I kind of didn't tell them about the whole, so when the doors closed, I said, that's it. And they go, oh, that wasn't bad. And the next thing those two people, well, okay, for about 30 seconds, they talked very unfavorably about my ancestors. But after that, they beat me in line to get back in and ride it again. Well, why would I do that? Just because I'm kind of a poop? Oh yeah, maybe some of that was true. But also, I got to ride it new vicariously, watching those two people not know what was going to happen. So, I think there's a trade-off.
And I mean, you provided something to them as well, that you did provide that unknown, that they wanted structure to know what was going to happen. So here's what's going to happen. And then at the end, whoa, here's what actually happens. And it's.
And I've always wondered since then, is that their favorite ride?
Yeah.
Is that, everybody wants a story, right?
Yeah.
Is that their story that they tell about Disney? I'd love to know.
Yeah. One thing a few months ago now, we're recording this early August 2022. So a few months ago, there was a couple articles about Disney adults and everything. And from that came like a discussion of people referring to visiting the Disney parks almost as pilgrimages and as like a religious experience in a way. What is psychologically, what is the link between something we're a fan of and calling it a religious experience? And I guess we have to start with, really what do people refer to as a religious experience?
Yeah, I think that it's two different kinds of questions. I will get asked about sport fandom. Is sport a religion? And my answer to that is always the same thing. I'm not a theologian, right? I'm not in the business of, my job is not to define what is and what is not a religion, right? I'm a social scientist that looks at what people do. So I'm not going to tell somebody if something is or is not a religion, but I can tell you whether or not what you're doing shares commonalities with things that we, sort of take as religion, right? There are an awful lot of commonalities with sport and religion. There are just as many commonalities with Disney and religion. Religions have their hallowed grounds. I mean, Disney has a lot of hallowed grounds, right? Religions have their, historically sacred figures. So does Disney, right? And, the figures in religion over time, they just get to be better and better and better people than they probably actually were.
Yeah.
It's not also true for the Disney company, right? It's like these people, we forget that they were human and they also had faults like every single person out there, including the two people in this conversation.
Yep.
There are things that are sacred in religions. There are things that are sacred in Disney, right? There are things that people do that are ritualistic in religions, that they do because of structure, and that they can't imagine not doing this. There's people go to a church service on Sunday, they don't pull out of a hat what you're going to do when, right? Yeah. I mean, you're going to first you'll do this, and then you do this. You go to church, and if you get there 20 minutes late, you still know what's happening at that moment in time. Disney's the same thing, right? I mean, people know what's going down in whatever aspect of Disney they're doing, because there are these sacred acts that you're always going to follow. Yeah. And if you listen to people that do Disney, we do this, and then we do this, and then we do this. I can't say, because it's not my area, whether or not fandom for Disney is a religion. I can tell you it has an awful lot in
Yeah.
common with things that everybody assumes, you know, are religious entities.
Yeah. Speaking of hallowed grounds, growing up in Kansas City or when you go back and visit, have you ever visited some of the Disney sites in Kansas City or made the short trip to Marceline and things like that?
I have not. It's been on the to-do list for a
Yeah.
very long time. It's on the bucket list, and I will do that. I probably haven't because, you know, I don't take a lot of trips back to Kansas City because they're all spent going to Disney. But
Yeah. Yeah.
irony, I think they call that.
We will stop at one point. I think when the boys are a little older, because when we drive through to see my wife's family, we actually drive on through Missouri. So if it's about 2 hours north of where we drive, I think. Um, so there's one more big question that I want to ask, and then I want to ask about, because we talk a lot about your strategy in the parks, and also like kind of your feelings toward the cruises and everything. But before that, I want to ask a question that a while ago, I was actually on someone else's podcast, and we discussed the fact that when people are at Disney, they seem to be in a different mood. And usually at least at the beginning of the day, usually a more joyful mood than when they are in other settings. Now, if it's 4 or 5 o'clock and the kids are tired and or people's feet hurt and all that, that's a different story. But this idea that what makes or what puts people in a specific mood when they go to Disney or consuming something with Disney.
One of my really good friends, John Morris, he was one of the people I mentioned. We would sit around and talk baseball and Disney. And he said he loved Disney. And I loved his line, because at Disney, every day is your birthday.
Yep.
And I think that that's it, that every time someone goes to Disney, whether it's the park or the cruise or whatever, that they really do feel like there's something special and magical about this day for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think that there is that Disney has figured out a way to have this culture that, I mean, you can't bottle it and sell it because other people would have a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right. They've just figured out a way to have that culture where when you get there, you just feel like every day is your birthday.
Yeah.
I think another reason is that everyone, again, once they get there, 5 o'clock may be a different issue, is that Disney fans are incredibly nostalgic.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now that's good news and bad news for Disney, right? The good news is that when people arrive at Disney, they're thinking about when they went as a child or when they took their children, right? And it's like, oh yeah, I still have conversations with my kids who are now grown-ups about things that happened, 20 years ago at Disney, and they remember them fondly. And so I think that there's definitely a nostalgia factor that Disney, like other fandoms, but I think in particular Disney, can like tap into for people, that they're smiling because as they go there, it's not just that they're super happy about the fact that they're at Disney. All of those past memories are getting thrusted forward. And so they're being flooded with all of the other great birthdays that they've had in the past. That's good news for Disney. The bad news for Disney is that, if people are going because they're nostalgic, that means that every time you close down a ride, you're taking away some, so for me, Disney in some ways is not what it once was, Disney World, because, again, I don't follow Disney, right? That you don't want to be the last person at the table, right? I mean, you got to change. And, why in the world would they still have Who Wants to Be a Millionaire play it? That show hasn't been on TV forever. Gosh, I missed that at Hollywood Studios, I mean, why would they still have Ellen's Universe of Energy and talk about, sources of energy from 25 years ago that like, well, yeah, okay, let's not do that now. I missed that show so much, Of course, they've got to replace Tarzan Rocks with Finding Nemo. That makes sense because people now like Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
Man, I love Tarzan Rocks. So they do kind of run that like balance of, we love the fact that people think about all the great times they have at Disney, but then when they get to Disney, they're also going to like walk back, walk past something that they used to do and be like, oh, I can't walk in Epcot and not think about Illuminations.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, change has to happen, but people are still going to miss those things.
Yeah.
But they'll go and find something new that they can be nostalgic about next time.
Well, and on that point, I think one thing Disney does very well is they pay homage to old things. So you go in an attraction, a new attraction that replaced something, and you see, you'll see things paying homage to that old attraction, and which helps with nostalgia, but it also it takes me down this path of Disney is, it can be something for so many people on so many different levels. If I want to go and I've never been, or I just want to go and I want to ride, I can go ride and I can try to ride as many rides as I can. I can think that's how successful the vacation was based on that. If I want to go and I want to go to restaurants, I want to go to as many restaurants as I can, like you said your friend does, like that, I can do that. Or if I want to go resort hop and park hop and see different things. But also if I just want to go and take it slow and look at all the details of all the names on Main Street USA, the knowing that walking down the middle of Liberty Square, why the concrete is a different color and you can gross people out with it. Like, it has something for so many different people. Why do you think that is important, that you can experience at this level, but you can keep going down further and further and further and experience at very minute levels and look for all these details as well? Why is that important, especially for like return consumption?
One time, I went to Epcot, and my goal at World Showcase was to go around every single corner in every single building. Okay. I wanted to literally look at every single thing in every single pavilion. And I did. It actually takes quite a long time, but I was successful in that. And, why would you do that? I think that there's some degree of, to say you did, everybody loves a good story, right? And people love to tell their Disney stories. So I think that there's that. But I also think that if you like something at a level that, the people that are going to watch this probably do, and the people that take your class are interested in why would someone like something that much, you want to bring on as much of it as you can, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, why do people know crazy baseballs? Why do I know that George Brett had 118 RBIs in 117 games in 1980? Why do I waste a neuron? I probably missed a test on the GRE because I knew that stat. I probably wasted a neuron, because when we love something, we just can't get enough of it. And one way of getting all you can is the nuance, right? Are those, people love Disney trivia, right? They like to know the little ins and outs. When Michelle and I went on the 10K, I told her, look, it's not just that you're going to be running through Disney, right? I said, you're going to be in the parks when they're not open.
Yeah. And
until you do that, you don't know how cool that is as a Disney fan. I said, you're going to be seeing things that they're never going to let you see, right? So we're running into, I believe it was Hollywood Studios, yes. And on the right, because we're running in a back street that you're never on, right? You
Yeah.
don't ever know this street is. And I pointed over, I said, look at that sign. No one sees that. The sign, big white sign, yay big giant black letters. It said break room. You
Yeah.
do not see a sign that says break room at Disney unless you're out running on the road. You never are. You're on the back side of Tower of Terror, which that does not look like the front side of Tower of Terror, right? Because they're not, why would it? And so, and she loved that, right? She loves seeing, oh yeah, so because you're seeing something that's new.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one thing that people like. You can do so much at Disney, but every time you go back, there is something that you can gain that's different. And again, that's one thing about having a place that's so big and so large. You know, Michelle and I have done a 4-day and a 3-day cruise on the Dream. So that's 7 days on a boat. And on our way back, driving back from the 3-day, I listed like 25 things on our to-do list that we never got to. There's still like 25 things that like everyone always would do on the boat that, you know, we still haven't shot baskets. She loves going, she hasn't shot baskets. We've still not played shuffleboard and all of those things. So there's just so much to do.
Yeah.
People are just looking for extra silly little things.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about is you have we've talked strategy in the parks before. And like when we go, it's typically, if I could help it, the first day is Magic Kingdom because that's the castle park and you get the, you know, the awe of walking in and first the awe of taking the boat or the monorail over and that kind of separation of space and supposed to be the separation of like kind of your mental space as well. But then the first ride is Peter Pan because that's I remember that ride. I love that ride. So I think every time except for maybe once or twice I've gone to Peter Pan.
There's your structure and your meaning right there.
Yeah. And you have an interesting strategy that we've talked about. And especially to avoid crowds. So what is your kind of strategy when you go, and what tips do you have?
Yeah, so it depends on who I'm going with, right? So I've gone kamikaze. Like Rick and I have done 5 parks in one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's 4 parks. We doubled up on a park. Another friend and I, we actually did 6 parks and 2 fireworks shows in one day. That's not my favorite way to do it. I like to stop and smell the roses. And so the first time I went with Michelle, which would have been in the fall of 2019, you know, I'm kind of I like to zig when they zag.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to get there before it opens. And so I always am there, you know, if the park opens at 8, I'm there at 7:30 every single time because I want to get as much of it as I can when it's not crowded. But at the same time, I like to, you know, walk and, you know, I like to look at all of the animals that I can see in the Tree of Life. Well, I knew Michelle had only gone once with her family when her kids were like, you know, 9 and 10, and you're just going boom, boom, right? So I'm like, is this gonna bore her? You know, I was nervous because is she gonna like how I do Disney? Because again, as we talked, but there's 1,000 ways to do Disney. And about halfway through the day, she goes, I'm loving this. This is so stress-free and so relaxed. We're not running from place to place. I was like, good. I can keep coming back to Disney my way, you know. So my strategy, if you're not going boom, 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 if it's you know, you and the significant other or you and the kids, to me, we always got there early. And again, remember, I've not stepped park since the pandemic. So, I mean, you know, I've not gone to Disney since Genie Plus. So that's going to impact the touring. But to me, always zig when they zag. So the first time that we went, Michelle and I, we went to Animal Kingdom got there when it opened, got to rope drop, and we went straight to the front of the Tree of Life. And I told her, I want you to turn around and look. And she turned around, and here's the mass of people coming. And they all headed to our
Yep.
right, their left.
Yep.
They're all heading to Pandora. Like, we're going that way. Us and 8 other people are heading to ride Everest 19 times while they stand in line. And just got that strategy when my kids were really little. We would get there when the park opened about, I don't know, maybe 4 o'clock, 3:30. We would head back. We'd be like, swimming against the stream, because everyone's coming in and we're heading out. Go get the kids a nap, get them a little sandwich in the room, go swimming. The rest of the world's, as you said, 5 o'clock rolls around and people are like dead. We're now energized. We're going back in the park. They're heading that way.
Yeah.
So our strategy was go when the people aren't there. We always took our kids out. All these times I've been to Disney, I have never stepped foot in Disney during a March spring break, in June, in July, in August, from the 22nd of December to the 5th or 6th of January. Never, because that's just not the Disney that I fell in love with. Getting to Disney I fell in love with was a Disney that was empty.
Yeah.
And so, that's why I always tell my friends, take your kids out if you can. Some can't. Take your kids out if you can, and try to avoid the crowds.
Yeah. One thing I did think of is a lot of time, I think everybody experiences this and everybody talks about it, is that last day, or when like your time is dwindling at Disney. There's kind of that change of, like
it's terrible, isn't it?
And it's and then when you get back, even when you get back and you're looking at pictures, you're like, oh my gosh, here's pictures from the first day here. Oh, here's pictures from the last day here. Like, one thing that I know I've heard that we've talked about a little bit is, and it's this idea of flow, is like, how do you stay in the moment? How can you, if you're having a moment and you're really, really enjoying something, and, like flow deals with performance and things like that, but all the focus that comes with that. But for something like this, how, like, psychologically, how do you think a person stays, or what would be your tips to help a person stay in the moment and not be looking elsewhere? What rides next? What time is the flight? What do we have to do when we get back to the room? Oh, I have to go back to work next week. Like, things like that.
It's very, very difficult. It's extremely difficult. And when I work with athletes or, other performers, it's one of the things that is the hardest to get people to do, is to not think about what did they just do or what are they going to do, but, to be in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's really, one of the main topics that people really discuss in psychology now is how can we do a better job kind of enjoying where we're at this place in time.
Mm-hmm.
When I work with athletes, one of the things, since I've been working with a team of 20 people, I'll say, okay, take out a piece of paper and write down a 2-sentence description of you doing something. And I've been doing that for years. I've never had a person writing something down. Everyone always writes down what they're going to do or what they've already done.
Yeah.
Right. People have a hard time staying in the moment. And at a place like Disney, it's really hard because there is such a letdown when you leave Disney. I mean, again, assuming that you've fallen in love with it. If you go to Disney and your experience is terrible, you're not going to have this. But I used to always print out a list of what we were going to do, like our tour plan on a sheet of paper. I would keep the sheet of paper with me. And on the last day, it would always, as we're leaving the park, it would always say, cry.
Yeah.
On our to-do list was cry, right? And I can remember one time we went to Disney, but then like 3 months later, we were taking a cruise and it said cry, but not too bad because the cruise is in like 12 weeks or something like that. It's hard, right? To stay in the moment because you know that it's coming. And I would find myself saying, oh no, I've only got 8 more hours.
Yeah.
Or, my kids, they loved Epcot. They loved Epcot. And we would always end with Epcot on the last night. And this is back, in 2002, 2003, 2004. And, my youngest, Kevin, he loved to go to the Living Seas. And my oldest, Eric, was really into video games. And he loved to go to Interventions and play the video games. And I would look at it, oh man, the last night's almost here. It's hard not to sort of let yourself get depressed. You just have to literally block that out of your mind and just really focus your attention on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because the end of the vacation is coming.
Yeah.
Right. And whenever I would find myself thinking, I can't stop thinking about the end of vacation, my only solution was I always planned my next Disney trip before I went on a Disney trip.
Okay.
Right. So like I'll run the risk of getting sad the last night that we're on the Wish. But the way I remedy that is I book my next Disney cruise while I'm on the Disney cruise.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, it's the last night. But I'm already thinking ahead. So my strategy, my suggestion to beat the last night doldrums, as I would always call it, is know what's next.
Yeah.
If you're like, I'm so depressed because I'm leaving Disney, well then stop thinking about the fact that you're leaving Disney. Think about the fact that you're going to come back here again. Yeah. That worked for me.
Okay. All right. Well, so
one more thing I will say to you, one more thing. The vast majority of times that I've gone to Disney, I've never set foot in Magic Kingdom.
Okay.
We took our 2 boys on a trip when they were about 8 and 13, 6 days at Disney, never went to Magic Kingdom.
Okay.
I've been to Disney twice with Michelle. We've still never gone to Magic Kingdom. My point is this: you get 100 people in a room that love Disney, you get 100 different ways of doing Disney.
Yeah.
Your first thing you have to do is a place I rarely would do at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I always like to close out with some rapid questions. These are things that you can explain. You don't have to explain anything at all if you don't want.
Sure.
And so, favorite Disney park?
Hands down, Epcot. It was MGMC. It was Hollywood Studios, but Epcot added things like Soarin' that I loved, and Hollywood Studios lost a couple things. So hands down, Epcot.
Okay. How about anywhere on property favorite ride?
Oh, Tower of Terror.
Yeah. Okay.
Favorite thing was Illuminations. Favorite ride, Tower of Terror. Favorite experience, first time family rode Soarin'. Okay.
That was the next question was favorite show. So
Illuminations, favorite non fireworks show. Got to be the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular.
Yeah. I agree. I love that. And we actually Ray Eady he's spoken in this class before. He used to play Indiana Jones in that stunt show.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was favorite anywhere on property, favorite hotel or resort.
Well, I mean, that's a tough one because it is a function of my bank account. Obviously, Animal Kingdom Lodge is amazing.
Yeah.
All Star Sports will always probably be my favorite because I tend to be a value kind of guy. Michelle and I stayed at Caribbean Beach and had one of the pirate rooms. I highly recommend it. If you can pull that off, that's pretty good. But my favorite would be either Animal Kingdom or All Star Sports.
Okay.
And I think I stayed in 11 of them at this point. So I got a bunch of them under my belt.
Okay. When we go back, if I stay on property, my like my first choices are, I look for the places on the Skyliner route now.
Yeah, I was about to
That's
say,
amazing.
I was about to say that that could be a game changer
Yeah.
if we go to the parks.
Yeah.
Because I've not been to the parks since the Skyliner was put together. You know, again, Michelle and I, we got there. Our run isn't for another day, so we've got an evening and a day at Disney World just to hang out on property. Well, first thing we did was we rode the Skyliner. We rode every inch of the Skyliner and then just back. You know, which by the way, I recommend to anyone. It's really fun.
I mean, this last time that we went, we stayed at Animation, Art of Animation, sorry. And I wanted the family to experience going to the parks without moving our car. So we go to Magic Kingdom, we take the bus. We take the bus, or from Magic Kingdom, we take the monorail over to Epcot. Then we took the Skyliner back to the hotel. The next day we went to Animal Kingdom. We took a bus back, and then rode the Skyliner to Epcot. The next day we rode the Skyliner to Hollywood Studios and then over to Epcot and back to our hotel. I mean, it's just so you never leave that kind of experience and that bubble when you're on that Skyliner and when you're experiencing that. It's
Cody,
awesome.
I've been to Disney, I don't know how many times. In January, this past January, Michelle and I, our room was right by the parking lot, and we had to go over to Wide World of Sports to check in for the run.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, why don't we just drive? It might save some time. That's the first time I've ever driven at Disney. So you're saying what you did is what I'd always done. And what I did was, again, there are so many different ways to do Disney.
So the what you're going on you've been on the Disney Dream. Have you been on other boats?
On the Dream, yeah, I think I've, you know, it used to be you could look on your Castaway Club and it would show which boats and when, and that they've taken that off the website. Disney IT, we always know. You never know what you're going to get. And hopefully they'll bring that back. I'm pretty sure I've been on 3 of the other 4.
Okay.
I've been on the Dream a bunch, I think, and the Fantasy and the Wonder, I believe. But
do you have a favorite?
Yeah, hands down, whichever one I'm walking on.
Okay.
I mean, I was just having this conversation with Michelle a couple of days ago that for a long time, Disney World and Disney Cruise were right here. They were just matched right up. Disney Cruise is just, because I'm now taking Disney Cruise just with Michelle. Oh my gosh, the level of relaxation of just being on, you know, no offense to my kids, but oh my gosh, you know, to be on a cruise boat and be pampered and not be chasing your kids around, you know, you want to talk about a vacation. That's a vacation. So we'll see about the Wish. Some of the things about the Wish, I think I will not be thrilled with, like the Deck 4 running track. You know, we're runners and we run on the track. There's no Deck 4 running track really. We got to run up 2 flights of stairs and back down. So they've made some changes, but there's some other things that I think will be great. So, you know, might be a push pull.
What are you most looking forward to on the Wish?
Probably the dinners with the show, because I think that Disney cruise shows are ridiculously good. The rainforest room, that they've put, the new spa rainforest room looks, I mean, they really upped their game there, and I always love the rainforest room. And just the new evening shows. I've kind of seen all the shows that the Dream and the others have, and so it'd be nice to be entertained where I literally will not know the ending, right?
Yeah. 2 more. Favorite restaurant on property? And Disney Springs is included.
Yeah, this is really easy for me. Hoop-de-doo.
Okay.
I mean, if you're talking about, one that you might frequent more often, Whispering Canyon. But
Yeah.
and if you're talking about inside of a park, boy, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Probably 50's prime time.
Okay.
But if you said you can go to eat anywhere, yeah, it's hoop to do for sure.
Okay.
I mean, there have been a number of times that I've had a conference and I just took like a cab over to hoop to do and then
Yeah.
came back. Yeah. I
Okay.
love that.
And the last one, favorite snack anywhere on property.
I've done, I mean, you've heard about beer around the world
Mhm.
at the World Showcase. Several times I've done chocolate around the world.
Okay.
I think that's super fun to do. I'll go with the Danishes at the Norway Pavilion.
Okay.
I love that. That's at Disney World. The fruit tarts on the Disney cruise and the food at Castaway Cay, that's the best food I've had anywhere, not just Disney. That's the best food, period, that I've had anywhere. That's my
Okay.
favorite meal on the planet is
Okay.
Castaway Cay.
All right. All right. Well, Dan, thanks for doing this.
Of course.
This was a
Yeah,
lot of
twist my
fun.
arm to talk about
Yeah.
Disney and fandom for a couple hours. Sure.
there's-
What a rough gig. I
Well,
won't even bill you for this.
there's so much more to talk about, but I think people get a little insight into. Dan and I will call to talk about research, and it'll be, hey, let's talk for 20 minutes. And we spend the first 40 talking about Disney and the next
Exactly.
10 talking about what we needed to talk about
Yeah,
originally.
that's not that is not the ratio. It's not, it's way closer to 10-1.
So for people who have questions or want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do it?
Wann at murraystate.edu.
Okay.
Wann at murraystate.edu. And doesn't matter when, I check my email all the time.
All right.
I'm happy to chat further.
All right. Well, Dan, again, thank you very much. This was
My
awesome.
pleasure.
Have a
My
great
pleasure.
rest of your day.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye, Cody.